Alrighty, alrighty. Hello and welcome to another CLO webinar. My name is Jared Hornsby, and I'm here today to help answer any general or technical questions that you may have. But before we get started with today's event, let's get familiar with our webinar platform. To the right side of this video window, you'll see our interactivity panel, your key to connection and engagement within today's webinar. Please use this panel throughout to react to speaker info and send chat messages to your fellow attendees. Let us know where you're coming in from today. Additional surveys and polls will also appear in this interactivity panel on the right side of your screen. If you have a question about today's content or the platform itself, feel free to drop those questions into the Q&A tab. We will have today's speakers address those questions during today's Q&A portion, and I will be on standby here to answer anything about the platform. Once today's event is complete, you'll be redirected to a short post-event survey. Please let us know what we can do to make our webinars even better. I'd like to thank our sponsor, GP Strategies, for helping with today's webinar. GP Strategies helps organizations amplify their people's potential at the speed of opportunity by delivering learning with speed, relevance, and quality. Today, we have Dr. Cheryl Jackson and Peggy Durbin from GP Strategies to tell us a bit more about why chasing speed is killing your learning velocity and how measurement fixes it. Take it away, Cheryl.
All right. Thank you, Jared. So good to be with everyone today. Today, we're going to challenge a common assumption in our space that faster learning delivery automatically leads to better business outcomes. Because, if we're honest, especially with the adoption of AI, what we see is that most organizations have really gotten very good at speed. They're more consistent, they have faster rollouts, and higher completion rates. But when we step back and we ask the question, are we actually building capability faster? The answer is often no. In fact, speed alone often creates just extra noise and making the work environment feel a little bit more chaotic than empowering. So instead of focusing on how fast we deliver learning, I want to focus on something a little bit more meaningful. And as Jared mentioned, that is learning velocity, the speed at which your organization builds and applies that capability. And the key idea for today is this. Learning velocity only becomes real when it's powered by measurement maturity. Or said another way, learning velocity is not how fast you launch learning, it's how fast the business gets better at work. All right, so let's jump right into it. When we talk to executive leaders, this is the question that we hear most. How fast can we adapt? Not how many courses did we launch, not what's our completion rate, but how quickly can the organization respond when something changes? And the data tells us exactly why that question is really so urgent right now. You may have seen Microsoft just surveyed 20,000 workers globally and found that 65% fear falling behind if they don't adapt to AI quickly. 65% are living in this state of fear. Yet with that fear, nearly 45% say it's still safer, or at least it feels safer to focus on their current goals rather than redesigning how they work. So that gap between the urgency that we feel and the action that we're taking is what executives are losing sleep over at night. And the environment isn't slowing down to wait. AI agents in Microsoft 365 alone have grown 15 times in a single year, 18 times in larger enterprises. And the pace of change that organizations need to adapt, it isn't hypothetical, it's measurable and it's accelerating. So let us know in the chat if these stats resonate with you. Are you seeing these trends in your organization? This increasing fear of AI, yet the tendency or the hesitancy to say, I want to stick with what's safe right now. At the same time, we're seeing the increased use of agents. They're just doubling, tripling, 15 times, 18 times. Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. So here's what makes this a learning problem and not just a technology problem. Yeah, a little bit of a mixture. I see some things coming in. So keep putting those in the chat for us. We'd like to see what you're going through. So we're talking about a learning problem, not a technology problem. Microsoft found that organizational factors like culture, manager support, how work is structured, those things actually account for twice the impact of individual effort when it comes to getting value from AI. So what does that mean? The bottlenecks, it's not people. Employees, they're already moving faster than organizations. The constraint is whether the systems around them can keep up. So the real issue is not whether we can produce learning quickly. It's whether we can help the business sense change, respond faster, and adapt capability at scale. The organizations pulling ahead, these are what Microsoft calls frontier firms. They're not just adopting new tools, they're learning faster as a complete system where every workflow becomes a signal. Every experience feeds back into how the organization improves. And that is the conversation executives want to have. And that is the conversation that learning velocity allows us to lead. All right, so here's where things start to break down. Many organizations optimize for more content, faster rollout, and higher consumption. And they assume that leads to faster capability. But in reality, it doesn't. There is no direct line between activity and capability. In fact, more content often creates the opposite of what we intend. It can create overload, slower decision making, and greater hesitation. So instead of accelerating that capability, we unintentionally slow it down. And this is the shift I want to make clear. Activity is not evidence, capability is. And if everyone could go on mute, that would be helpful. I don't know if everyone else can hear some of the noise in the background. Okay, so I've referred to it a few times now, but what do we mean by learning velocity? Well, at its core, what it is the ability to build organizational capability at the speed of change. And here's the critical point. Learning velocity is not created by great content alone. It's not created by access alone, and it's not even created by both together. We actually need this third factor, and what you see here is action. So let me dive into that for just a moment. Relevance without accessibility. You have this perfect learning experience, but it's buried in a system that no one can navigate. Accessibility without relevance. This is where our content is easy to find. It's beautifully designed, and it may even be instantly available, but it does not match what the people actually need in their work. What's going to drive it forward? What's going to be the differentiator between applying this new technology and actually making life easier and making work faster? So relevance and accessibility without action, people find the right content easily, but they never apply it. They complete the module and nothing changes in the business. Let me know in the chat if this is something that you have experienced where we have great content. We go to all of this effort to make sure that people can see it. We have focus groups. We check their progress. We ask them questions. Are you accessing it? We look at completion rates, but we're still not seeing this change, this application. Absolutely. Yeah. Us too. We see this across the board. Velocity only exists when learning turns into action. We understand this intuitively, but what does that mean? So when the right content is easy to access and it's immediately applied in the flow of work, that's when we get that true learning velocity and get learning at the speed of business, where we actually see outcomes that are meaningful to the organization. All right, so this is where the concept becomes a capability. Learning velocity is the ability to build capability at speed and at scale. But measurement maturity is where we make that capability visible, adjustable, and scalable. Without measurement maturity, learning velocity really stays quite theoretical. You may have energy, you may have momentum, you may even have enthusiasm across the board, executive enthusiasm even, But if you cannot see what is changing and where it is changing and whether it is translating into true capability, you cannot scale with confidence. And that's where it really begins to break down. And that's why this conversation is not just about learning design, it's about building and operating systems that make this capability acceleration real. Okay. So, one shift we need to see and make intentionally is what gets measured and how. Measurement is not just about reporting and tracking, but it is a true driver of decisions. It's how the organization make decisions that move the business forward. Because in any system, what you measure gets prioritized, what gets prioritized gets resourced, and what gets resourced determines speed and focus. So measurement is not passive, it is directional, determining what gets noticed, what gets ignored, and how quickly you adjust. And this is where learning breaks down in many organizations. They are measuring activity, not capability movement. So they can't see whether behavior is actually changing, whether decisions are improving. Are we seeing an improvement in the types of decisions that we're making and how quickly we're making those decisions? And then whether capability is actually building, which means they can't adjust in real time. Because if you cannot see capability moving, you cannot steer it, and you can't not steer it intentionally. And if you can't steer it, you can't claim velocity with confidence. All right, so this brings us to a paradox many organizations face. The faster you move, actually, the less you can see, and traditional metrics lag behind real performance. Early signals are subtle and actually very easy to miss. Dashboards usually show outcomes, but they don't show the movement itself. So you may be moving fast, but not know whether you're moving in the right direction. And that is the paradox that we want to address. It creates a real leadership problem because if executives only see lagging indicators, learning always looks late to the conversation. And I think we've all seen this before, where capability movement starts much earlier than that. And the challenge is learning how to see it sooner so that we can get in front of it and have that seat at the table. So, where does learning show up first? Not in completion data, not in quarterly metrics, and usually not in the dashboard itself. We're just not very good at capturing that right now. But it does show up in behavior, in signals like faster decision speed, greater confidence to act, more experimentation, reduced hesitation, and a stronger willingness to challenge assumptions, including the AI outputs themselves. And these are the leading indicators of learning velocity. They show up before the lagging business metrics even move at all. And this is the shift I would like to see leaders make. Stop looking only for proof after the fact. Start looking for movement while it's happening. Let me know in the chat if that's also a shift that you would like to see made in your organizations, with your leadership, and even with the learning solutions that you're putting forward. I think we'll probably see a lot of yeses in here. I hope so anyway, because signals give you something that outcomes never can. They let you adjust faster, which is what we ultimately want to do. So I want to take a moment here and pause and see where you all are. So we'll go ahead and pull up the poll, Jared, if you would. All right. So let's take a look at which best describes how your organization measures learning impact today. Go ahead and put your answers in there. We primarily track activity, some behaviors, but inconsistently. Leading indicators in targeted areas. Capability movement. Let's see if I can take a peek at how we're doing here. I might have hit it prematurely, but let's see how we're lining up. Okay, so we're seeing a lot of votes at the top. We primarily track activity, completions, and participation. Got a little bit closer to the end. We actually are using measurement to actively steer business decisions, but a lot at the top. Yeah, so that is what we typically see. Most organizations sit somewhere in those first three categories. And that's not failure, but it is a signal because the shift from measuring activity to measuring capability is exactly what defines measurement maturity. And that maturity is what determines whether learning remains reactive or if it becomes strategic. All right. Thank you for your responses there. I see a few of them still coming in. I'll go ahead and put the chat back on so I can see how we're doing. I see some questions in there. You're answering each other's questions. I love it. Thank you. Keep that activity up. All right, so we've talked about these pieces all as I've been building up to this. So, in summary, let me touch on it quickly. This measurement of only these lagging indicators create real risk because value often exists before it becomes measurable in the most traditional ways. We're looking at behavior shifts, capability builds, performance improves, and only later do those lagging metrics ultimately catch up and give us something to show. That delay creates what I'd call the visibility gap. And when value is not visible early enough, this is what we all know. We've experienced this. Learning gets seen as a cost, not a driver. Investment gets delayed or reduced. Influence in strategic decisions becomes limited, and a credibility gap begins to emerge. This is why leading indicators matter so much, and we need to put emphasis on getting out in front of them. They don't replace business outcomes, but they do make them visible sooner. If you can't see it, you can't scale it. And that's the risk, but it's also the opportunity. So I'll turn it over to Peggy to really dive into what measurement maturity means.
Thank you, Cheryl. Yeah, measurement maturity is our opportunity. And in our experience, the reason most organizations don't have the visibility that Cheryl's speaking to today is because they don't have a consistent, repeatable, and scalable approach to their measurement practice. So we assess measurement maturity by using benchmark experience from other organizations to indicate progressive levels of sophistication and capability across three categories of people, technology, and process. And you can see each main category has either 3 or 4 subcategories for further definition. So take a look on the far left of this maturity model. So organizations that are emerging in terms of its people have isolated measurement specialists. They have limited capacity in terms of the number of people who can support the measurement practices. There's no real ownership because it's more of an ad hoc advocacy. And the only real stakeholder alignment is around compliance-driven initiatives. In terms of technology, L&D organizations on the far left have very basic reporting tools, probably standard, your standard LMS reports and spreadsheets. Their data is focused primarily on traditional learning data and utilization data, which is kind of what we saw, in that poll. And they rely on standard LMS reports for analytics. They may have some people who do some manual analytics, probably with those spreadsheets. And then finally, for measurement processes, L&D organizations on the far left, use measurement for very limited purposes. So they don't really have a governance in place. They're designing with measurement in mind, mostly for compliance-driven or learning objective-based measurement. The execution of measurement defaults to learning metrics, as we said, and the way in which these organizations use measurement to improve is primarily reactionary and, once again, compliance-driven. So a lack of rigor and structure in these areas prevents organizations from meeting the needs of the business at speed. And that's the velocity that Cheryl referenced earlier. Now let's take a look at what an L&D organization on the other end of the spectrum looks like. So instead of its people being just enthusiasts, they're thought leaders. In terms of capability, they're externally recognized experts. I mean, these people are winning industry awards, speaking at conferences, conducting webinars. And in terms of capacity, they not only have a single specialized group of measurement practitioners, but they have resources that extend throughout the enterprise and can be shared and leveraged across the enterprise. The measurement practice has a strategic leader who not only champions for measurement, but owns it. And at this point, L&D is so closely aligned with the business that the business is actively, they are demanding measurement insights because they know that you can deliver them. So a mature measurement practice within the technology area leverages AI and machine learning tools. It's people data, learning data, and business data are not only fully integrated, but also automated. And it goes beyond inferential statistics into exploratory and predictive analytics. In terms of processes, not only is there full governance and standards in place, but L&D partners with the business to actually create annual measurement plans and recommendations for the next year. Because of the insights into data, L&D is able to enable personalized learning experiences. They can use predictive modeling to optimize learning impact and use proactive insights to not only improve the impact of learning, but prescribe and plan interventions. So we view the advancement of measurement maturity as an opportunity because it shifts learning from just activity reporting to credible business-aligned insights. And this enables those clear conversations with executive stakeholders about the value, impact, and prioritization of learning initiatives. Now, does this mean that every L&D organization needs to be at the far right to meet its business needs? Absolutely not. However, I would argue that if an organization isn't mature in terms of its data and technology in the very near future, they'll be left behind. We're just moving at that rapid of a pace. So I want to give you an idea here of what this might look like. So I've pulled together an amalgamation of a few clients that we've worked with in terms of how they rated themselves for current state of measurement maturity. And you can see, it's interesting, look within particularly that data area. This is where most organizations struggle the most because their data is fragmented, isolated, and far from clean. I'm curious, in the chat, is this kind of where your data is? Or do you feel like your data is really getting more clean, integrated, automated? I'm really curious to hear from you about that. When you don't have clear insight into your data, it doesn't just affect reporting. It slows that learning velocity itself or our ability to respond to the needs of the business. Now, I want to show you here, this is a pretty common picture of where organizations want to be within the next 3 years. Notice not all of them are fully mature, and they may never be, and that's okay. It really depends on what makes sense for your organization. So the first step is determining what you already have in terms of your measurement practice. And then once you've defined where you want to be, you have to figure out, what do I need to get there? What do I need to do? And what do I need to reach that desired state? And then finally, we can't do everything all at once. We don't have all the resources in the world. You have to determine your top priorities. So I want to share, here's an example of what a 3-year roadmap might look like for an organization, just in terms of maturing measurement within the people category. You can see there are very foundational tasks around, establishing a competency framework and assessing your current talent to gauge their capability. We have in here, establishing a champion network that can share and educate practitioners on the measurement standards, tools, and processes that you put in place once they are in place, and so on. Each of these tasks are very unique to the organization. Its operating model, people, and even culture. We mentioned culture earlier, and there were some comments in the chat around culture, and it's so important. It has to be modeled from the top down. Because no doubt it takes leadership, someone who is willing to stand up and preach about the importance of this work and take it on. I am incredibly passionate about this, as you can probably tell, but it really does take that leadership and someone who is championing it and is going to take ownership of it. I can't reiterate the importance of focusing your measurement efforts to ensure learning is not only aligned to today's needs, but positioned to anticipate the future capability demands, because that's what's going to enable learning to inform strategy, not just support it. So Cheryl, I'll turn it back to you.
All right, thank you. I love the mention of culture, the discussion of culture and champion networks, and having that that embedded peer influence that really helps drive the shift from not just identifying these metrics and these behaviors, but actually following through and ensuring that they are recognized as valuable pieces of information that we want to measure and follow, and just make sure that they're being used to drive some of those key decisions. The culture shift is such a critical element, not just in measurements across AI and any other of these big movements that we're seeing right now. So let's tie this all together. Learning velocity is about more than just delivering training quickly. It's about how quickly you can sense, respond, and adapt capability in this ever shifting, ever changing, ever disruptive environment that we're all experiencing. But you can't do that without the right people and the right skill sets and mindsets, the right technology in place with easy access to clean, usable, accurate data, and standards and governance in place to provide the guardrails while supporting the fast-paced business world that we all live in. So if you want clear insight across your organization on how learning is impacting the business, and you want to leverage AI to personalize the learning experience for even more impact, you must have a mature measurement practice in place. Progressing across that maturity spectrum is what transforms learning velocity from a concept that we talk about into a strategic advantage that truly drives decision making and organizational strategy. So thank you for your attention so far. I want to go ahead and open it up for Q&A. So Jared, do we have any questions in the chat?
Yes, we do. Got some questions here. First one is going to come from Amanda. Is it possible to directly tie learning to the business metric, or is it just correlation? We aren't in a vacuum, so it's hard to say that learning improves XYZ, therefore it was successful.
That's a great question. I'll take that one, Cheryl.
Thank you.
Amanda, that is a very common question, and it's something that we struggle with, throughout our industry. We actually do have a process that we use. It's called a measurement map, and for a single learning initiative, what we do is we have direct business alignment conversations with the stakeholder, and we identify the metrics that they are looking to move, the business metrics that they're looking to move based on this learning initiative. And then, Cheryl mentioned the lagging indicators. Those are the business metrics. Basically anything that's got a financial value to it. That's what we call the business metrics. But we look at, well, how do we change that metric? How do we move the metric in the right direction? And that's where we identify the behaviors that drive the metric to move in the right direction. Those behaviors we then capture as the leading indicators. And leading indicators can be many things, not just behavior changes, but it could be skill shifts, it could be knowledge shifts, but it's creating what we call a causal chain of evidence from the learning initiative to the leading indicators, the lagging business indicators, and the organization's strategic goals. And so by isolating the behaviors and what impacts the business metrics, we can do what's called a full-on measurement study, where we go through the process of identifying a study group. How are we going to conduct the study? We kind of treat it like a clinical drug trial, honestly. And then, we can demonstrate business impact through that process. But I will say a lot of times stakeholders and as L&D experts, as long as the leading indicators and the business metrics are moving in the right direction, typically the business is happy. I mean, that's really what you want to see. You want to see those metrics moving in the right direction. I hope that. How are these behaviors tracked, though? Oh, very good question. So when you identify the behaviors, then you look at Well, how am I going to look at that behavior shift? Is that through observations? Is it through the metrics around the behavior and how it's shifted? So if behaviors are moving in the right direction, or if behaviors are changing, what are some of the key metrics around the behaviors? If it's a process, then are there fewer incidents of injury in around the behavior? So you kind of have to look at the indicators around the behavior, and that's typically the type of indicators that we look at. I'm just going to read some of the additional comments here. A big part of life. Yes, valuable. Absolutely, Amanda. I mean, I think it can be exhausting as as learning practitioners and leaders to constantly prove our value to the business. And that's why when we talk about measurement maturity, so much of it is around the alignment and also the ownership, because when we can have that true partnership with the business, they see our value. They see that we are helping them meet their goals, their strategic goals, their business goals, but also we're helping them move the numbers in the right direction. And that really speaks to the business. I mean, I try so hard to encourage leaders, learning professionals, to not speak as learning professionals. Let's speak as the business speaks. Let's talk their language, so they know that we are true partners for them.
And if I could jump into just to tag on, don't know that it answers the question, but when you were talking about measuring behavior change and identifying those behaviors, one of the leading indicators of behavior change is mindset shift and attitude and beliefs about what you're doing. So when you're looking at something like AI and transforming the way that we work and think about interacting with our customers and our clients and each other, we need to first experience that belief system change. So before the behaviors can change, we need to capture the heart and mind, right, of the individuals. So those are some ways too you can get in front of even the behavior change and start say, we can't measure the behavior change quite yet, where we can't really tell if this capability is moving up, but one thing we can track is our attitudes and our beliefs about it. So having those surveys, those focus groups, those measurements that you can get to say, are we seeing a belief system change? That'll be a key indicator for whether the behavior is going to start shifting.
And Heather has a great question here. What would be an indicator measurement around better people leadership? Not people management, but people leadership. And I have some thoughts, Cheryl. If would you like me to start on that one?
Please,
okay.
yes.
So when we think about real leadership and not management, we think about, boy, people have put it in the chat a couple times. We think about culture. Are our people truly feeling valued? So much I think would go towards some of your annual surveys, around how people are feeling, the pulse check within your organization. I would also say retention. I mean, there are many things that can go to retention, right? I mean, the economy itself can have a big impact. However, if your people feel valued, if they feel like they're contributing to the culture and to the business itself and feeling rewarded for that, then then you're going to be retaining your people. So, I mean, there are a lot of different ways to measure it, but definitely not just the numbers around, am I just happy? It's around that value of feeling like you're contributing to the organization. Cheryl, do you have anything else to add to that one?
We're talking about the people leaderships, or I was typing. I think that what you're saying is spot on. And in terms of people leadership, are we establishing that direction, that vision, that belief, guiding people, developing, helping them move along the change curve in a meaningful way, as opposed to really those mechanical and tactical elements of a shift? So those are the things that that we're going to be looking for. And a lot of that does come down to, sorry, I'm getting a lot of noise. I don't know where it's coming from. Are we seeing that shift in how people are working with each other and helping bring each other along? And I can't overspeak to that belief system change. Are we catching on? And one thing I was typing in that comment there is that's where transformational change comes into. We're not talking about tactical change in these situations. If there is an issue right now with faking, we're actually going to be talking about that next week, where we're looking at people who, yes, I'm going to pretend I'm going to go through the motions. You may see an behavior change, but I'm not really putting my heart into it. I'm not going above and beyond to learn about what I'm doing. I'm just doing the bare minimum. You said I need to put my emails through this. I'm putting my emails through that. I'm going to tell you I'm using it a lot more than I actually am. But when I believe there's value for me, that this is going to make my life better in a meaningful way, whether it's make my job faster, make my job better, help me get a promotion, do all of the things that I want to do, then I'm not doing it because you told me to. I'm doing it because I see the value in that. And that's where we need to start having those conversations. And that's where people leadership comes in. Are we getting that message across? Are we cascading those talking points and those benefits? And are our leaders demonstrating those behaviors to others? Are they being vulnerable with their experiences, sharing their success stories, working it into conversations, treating technology as another coworker as opposed to something that we all have to get behind and just do? I'm seeing this. I'm going to be honest, retention measurement is hard because it doesn't always indicate good leadership, because the people that got in an organization to where they are might not be where the organization needs to be, and orgs may need to lay off and pivot or shed people who are going to the next place, who are not going to the next place the org is going. Yes. Yes, and that's where something like a measurement map can come in, and we can have those that open dialogue and conversation about what is going to drive awareness of, are we getting where we actually want to go?
Excellent. I did also have some questions as well, just from me, for organizations in that implementing or embedding stage, kind of referring to that roadmap. What do you find to be the highest points of friction within the people, technology, and processes uh, state?
Jared, I am so sorry. I was reading a comment. Could you repeat the question?
Yeah, no problem. For organizations that are in the implementation and embedding stage within that maturity roadmap,
Mm-hmm.
what do you find to be the most common point of friction in the technology, people, and process areas?
I would say embedding priorities. And particularly with some of the very large organizations that I've worked with, where for the most part, learning is not centralized. It has been a real struggle to get, in particular, the data sources integrated. There's the people who own the data, they tend to hold it very near and dear to their heart. Sometimes they just don't want to share it. And so I would say politics around that and the infrastructure has been a struggle. And also, particularly with very large organizations, it's getting the pipeline, the real pipeline in place. I call it a pipeline, but that infrastructure to integrate the data. In terms of, I would say, people and around, the middle road there, it is resources. With the economy the way it is, we all know, money gets funded elsewhere. Money gets pushed and shifted around. So the investment into upskilling people within the measurement practice, that's another area where I see difficulty. Any other questions?
Yeah, we still have a little bit more time here. If you have any questions in the chat, anything we wanted to add, Cheryl, Peggy, any,
I'll add on to that since we do have a little bit of time.
sure.
As we're looking at things like AI coming in, one of the things that we're fairly good at right now is putting in governance. We're tackling that like a checklist. Okay, I need to have governance. I need to tell people what to do. We need to have a tool in place. We need to get some guardrails around this, and to have some regulation around which tools we use and how we use it and what we can lock down and what we can't. And so we're really good at that side. We're getting better. There's whole processes to do that. What we're still having to work on quite a bit is to really shift that thought process around creativity and exploration, and to say, yes, there is a balance between this regulation and locking it down, but not to the detriment of being creative and exploring and being curious and interested in this. If we talk too much about the hard side of it with the policies, the technology, and all of these elements, then we lose that people side that says what's going to make it work is making sure that people are moving forward in the direction that's going to lead to the right outcomes, which is, are we engaging in it with curiosity, with an open mindset, with wanting to learn about it, and not being so overly restrictive that people are afraid to even try, because did I follow this rule, and did I use the right tool, and did I, all of these things that are really going to hinder their ability to latch on to it and get to the point where we're seeing those capability improvements. So I would always say the people are the hardest ones to capture and move the needle on.
Yeah. Samantha, you have a question here. I'm curious to learn more about what the accountability changes look like. How is it received? Is that something that needs to be revised more frequently, especially with the future generations, technology, and mindset change? Just a follow-up quick question. Do you mean accountability around a measurement practice itself? If you could just, yes, okay. Yeah, where I have seen this the most successful, and really advancing a measurement practice quickly is where either the CHRO or CLO truly takes ownership of the measurement practice, and not only, it's that top down perspective again, right? And it's aligning with the business, but if you can speak to the measurement practice in this way, it really will create momentum with the entire enterprise. And it's setting up that infrastructure to not only have a measurement practice, but with those standards in place, centralizing as much as possible your measurement practice, or at least the governance of it, so that then you can have champions sharing out that practice and the standards with perhaps other divisions, disciplines, throughout the organization. That's where I've seen this the most successful and shift to maturity at pace where it needs to go. So I don't see the accountability necessarily changing over time, but I think that having the passion and the voice at the top is critical. I hope that answers your question.
And well, yes. I want to touch on Caitlin's question here. Several of the leading indicators are self-report, such as confidence to act or willingness to experiment. In organizations where self-report experiences heavy halo bias, how can we tap leading indicator in a more objective way? With any type of mindset, belief system, you are often going to have this self-report and the struggles that go along with that. There are things that we can do to lessen some of that influence. So having a anonymous as possible, asking the questions a little bit more broadly, having scales that don't just, we're not asking directly, how do you feel about this, but capturing their overall concept of so if we're talking AI, it's the easiest thing to relate to right now. If we're talking about AI, what are your general belief systems about this? Not necessarily attaching it specifically to your work and in this setting, but making it a little bit more broad so that it feels a little less dangerous. We can also talk to focus groups where we're having conversations among peers and listening to each other. This is also where those champion networks come in, where they're embedded within their peer groups and actually listening to the feedback real time. They're not asking for it. They're not filling out a survey. They're just listening to the conversations that are being had, bringing that information back to the group and saying, hey, there's a lot of chatter in the break room right now about how they're not really understanding this, or some concerns in this area. So they're able to bring that feedback forward, and you can get it a little bit more holistically and less pointed. But even though it is self-report, sometimes that's still the best way for us to capture changes in those belief systems and mindsets. It is a tough one. And then I think we really struggle to draw a straight line from L&D initiatives to org successes. Just because someone was promoted doesn't mean the courses they took were the reason. Absolutely. There are non-measurable elements like leadership coaching, mentorship programs, stretch assignments, etc. Absolutely. It is hard to draw that line. And that's where we're getting in front of as many measurements as possible, but recognizing that it's a system. Learning is just one piece of a larger system, which includes mentoring, coaching, stretch assignments, opportunities, and then how we're measuring their actual performance. All of those things go together. So it is hard to pull out the different measurement pieces. But when we have justification for how it fits into that larger system, then it can still get some of the credit for that. Yes, we were still part of this system that doesn't work without the training. And then we layer that on with some of those post-training surveys, the opinion feedback about it. But then what was the training? Was there a skill, a capability, a knowledge that was in that training that we can link directly to it? So it does take some extra work, but we should be able to start peeling out some of those individual efforts and align them to different elements of that completed system. Good question.
And I got another question here from Charlie. Can you apply these themes in smaller companies where there aren't standard operating procedures? I'm thinking of mergers and acquisitions in small private equity firms.
Oh, sure. Yes. So absolutely. Whatever your business needs are, you can definitely scale the measurement maturity model and that assessment to, wherever you are within your measurement space. It doesn't have to be large scale. You probably have a lot less friction to do what you need to do because you are a smaller organization. So it absolutely, yes. In fact, like I said, you don't have some of the headaches that the larger organizations have when they're trying to advance their measurement practice.
Gotcha. And I think that is going to be our time for today. I'm not seeing anything else in the chat here. I do want to thank our speakers today. Peggy, Cheryl, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for everyone out in the audience for attending today's webinar. Once you leave today's event, you'll receive a survey on the presentation, and we would really appreciate if you could complete that and provide your feedback. You'll also receive a follow-up email within 24 to 48 hours with a link to view today's recording. On behalf of GP Strategies and our presenters, thank you so much for joining us today, and we will see you on the next one.
Thank you all.
Bye.